the #1 factor in hair loss. In this video, I'm going to focus on the most common hair loss situation, which is the pattern hair loss. If you're a man that has receding hair, or you're a woman noticing a thinning on the top of the head, this is also for you. A lot of the research shows that certain remedies that work for hair loss are up against a barrier, okay? And that is a physical barrier on the top of the head. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, which is scar tissue. It's a physical barrier on the top of your skull that won't let the hair grow. Before we get into how to correct that, you need to know that these hair follicles are not dead. There are actually stem cells sitting in there. They're dormant, but they're there. They're alive. In 2024, researchers from the University of Virginia discovered that these stem cells that are responsible for growing hair are still completely alive even in someone that is completely bald. Just like microbes in the soil in the wintertime are basically just dormant. They're asleep. Why are they asleep? Because there's scar tissue that won't let things get through to wake them up. So then the next question is, what causes scar tissue? Well, inflammation. The inflammation can get into these tiny little blood vessels and create calcification through here as well. The more this blood flow is obstructed, the less oxygen and nutrients can get into this follicle. They have even done biopsies on people with pattern hair loss, and they found up to 70% of these people had this situation I'm talking about right here. Now this explains why the rosemary oil or the different types of remedies you've used might not work. The remedy is not the problem, it's the barrier. But now let's talk about something even more interesting. Maybe you've heard of something called DHT causing this pattern hair loss, right? This is a powerful form of testosterone. Testosterone turns into it, and then this has the capacity to cause this loss of hair. But there is a deeper root cause than DHT, and that is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a condition where you have a lot of insulin being pumped out by the pancreas, and then the cells are going to block it. So you're going to have resistance to that insulin. Another really fascinating thing about this hair follicle, it's dependent on glucose for its energy. Okay, it can't live on ketones, it can't live on fat, it needs glucose. Now, based on that, you might be thinking, oh, geez, I need to consume more glucose and carbs, right? No, because that creates insulin resistance. Insulin is a hormone that helps you absorb glucose. But how are you going to absorb glucose if you have resistance to insulin? In addition to that, there's 3 other things that this insulin resistance will do. It slows down and constricts blood supply to the hair follicle. It then creates inflammation. That inflammation then increases these little cells right here that then cause more scar tissue. Part of the program I'm going to recommend is involving correcting insulin resistance. If you just take a DHT blocker, whether it's a drug that blocks it or something natural, and you don't address this, you may not see results. You are a fish living in an environment that's very toxic. Welcome to planet Earth, where everything around us is engineered for dependency or addiction. From the screens that we watch to the food that we eat, I developed a program that works in the exact opposite. It focuses in on your environment, the water in the tank, not the fish. Because if we can change your environment and make the good habits easier and the bad habits more difficult, then you don't have to rely on willpower or discipline, because focusing in on the environment first allows you to focus on the real problem. Click the link down below, take the quiz, and find out the key changes in the exact environment to make a huge difference in your health. Another interesting thing that happened in 2024, it's actually a case study. It was published, a man with classic hair loss, and they tested his blood and they found the fasting glucose was normal, but his fasting insulin was super, super high. So think about this. If you have a high level of fasting insulin, you're going to develop insulin resistance, okay? Sooner or later, it's going to happen. And the other thing that he had was a dark velvety patch on his neck, okay? That's another indication of either diabetes or prediabetes, or a classic insulin resistance symptom. Now, they put him on one medication to deal with insulin resistance. No hair treatments, no topicals, just a medication to treat his insulin resistance. And within 6 months, guess what? All of his hair came back just from fixing insulin resistance. Now, personally, I'm not recommending medication for insulin resistance. There's many other ways to do it naturally. But it's just an interesting point that when you reduce insulin resistance, your chances of getting your hair back go up. So step number 1, you need to go on a low carb diet, okay? They call that the ketogenic diet. With that low carb diet, you definitely need to do intermittent fasting because we want to create a condition called autophagy, which is this recycling of damaged proteins, because autophagy will also wake up these stem cells. Now, before I forget, I have to mention something about DHT because it's not a terribly bad thing. And I know a lot of people associate it with hair loss, but it has a lot of other benefits. So we're not trying to bring it down too low. We just want to normalize it by dealing with this insulin situation. DHT is super important in many things. One is puberty development, facial hair, libido, and it also creates a very powerful anti-anxiety effect. So in other words, it has a lot to do with your mood. When certain people get on hair loss medication and they lower this too much, many times they develop mood disorders, depression, because this is lowered too much. So a lot of people ask me, what supplements do I recommend? Now, of course, I'm not biased of my own high-quality supplement line, but if you go to Amazon and type Dr. Berg supplements, you'll find more information. All right, so now let's get into the most important part of this video. How do we deal with the scar tissue, okay? And that is going to be right here, number 2, microneedling. It's not that expensive. You can get them from Amazon. You can apply them to your scalp. This is really the only method that I know of that has the most research to break down some of the scar tissue around these follicles. So here's how it works. You're going to be creating very, very tiny holes in your scalp. And then in the healing response, it's going to break down this collagen, the scar tissue, and replace it with healthy tissue. It kind of opens the door, so it allows the topical remedy to go deep in the scalp. Once you do microneedling, you don't want to apply it immediately because it could irritate the area, okay? You want to wait 24 to 48 hours later. The depth of the microneedling should be between 1 and 1.5 millimeters, okay? Done once every 2 to 4 weeks. So as soon as you do microneedling, you'll open up the door for about 1 or 2 days. And that's when you want to apply this remedy right here, topical melatonin. Now, there's other remedies that you can use, but this one, based on the research, works the best. What's interesting about melatonin is that it can act as a powerful antioxidant, but apparently it's a very powerful way to help stimulate this whole area right through in here. And you're going to do this at night before you go to sleep, okay? Because melatonin tends to make you tired. Now, if you want to take it to the next level and you want to do more, there are several other things that you can add, okay, to the melatonin together with it, okay? You can add rosemary oil. There's a lot of research on rosemary oil. And again, this is topical. I mean, in a head-to-head trial of over 100 patients over 6 months, rosemary oil nearly almost matched the results of Rogaine without the side effects. Another topical remedy is saw palmetto. And there were 5 clinical trials that showed positive results on saw palmetto. Pumpkin seed oil, 400 milligrams per day taken orally. One randomized controlled trial showed a 40% increase in hair density. Now, in a previous video I did about hair loss, I talked about onion juice, okay? And I wanted to address that directly because in one study, onion juice showed an 87% regrowth in a clinical trial. I mean, that's an incredible number. But that study was done on people that had an autoimmune hair loss situation, not a pattern hair loss situation. So if you have that condition, you want to do onion juice with the microneedling. But the reason why the onion juice works so well is it's so loaded with quercetin, which is a very powerful inhibitor of inflammation. I also want to mention stress, the stress factor, cortisol. Cortisol worsens insulin resistance. A lot of people have hair loss after a stressful event, but not necessarily right away. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because that could be another reason why you lose your hair, in which case the best antidote for that is long walks every day and as much sleep as you could possibly get, and taking B1. But I think the next most important video you should watch is how to get on a healthy version of the low carb diet with intermittent fasting in this video right here. Check it out right now.